Batman Beyond is responsible for a wealth of brand new characters. It would have been easy for the creative team to just copy Batman's classic rogues, Killer Croc Beyond, Two-Face Beyond, but instead they looked across Marvel and DC Comics for inspiration and created something new. Many of these foes were one-and-done characters like the subject of today's video, Armory. Now, he's quite an interesting character because while he is a criminal, he didn't really want to be. Unlike most villains, Armory's story isn't about greed or power, it's about fear. The fear of not being enough. Armory was Big Jim Tate, and technically he made his debut in the Batman Beyond episode Spellbound, where his wedding was targeted by the thief Spellbinder. Spellbinder hypnotized Jim's new bride Lorraine into thinking she'd been transported to an alien world just to steal her jewelry. Jim was a weapons engineer at Wayne Powers, an expert in his field, with degrees in electronics and engineering. As such, he was paid very well for his services. He was used to the high life and wanted only the best for his new wife and stepson Jared. When Terry first learns that Jared's mother is getting remarried, Jared is indifferent to his new stepfather. Until Jim bought him a sports car, and Lorraine loves the life that Jim has provided for them. A lavish wedding and a massive home Lorraine could redesign however she liked. Everything in their life was absolutely perfect. Until Wayne Powers' new CEO, Paxton Powers, decided to merge Jim's department with another and made him redundant. It's implied Powers saw Jim as someone that was too expensive and may have looked to replace him with someone cheaper. Jim was offered a modest severance package. Now, you would think that with him being such an expert, he'd have no problem finding a new job. But the weapons industry was in a general decline, and every company turned him down. When Lorraine expressed concern about their spending habits, Jim told her that everything was fine. In reality, he was rapidly running out of money, but he didn't want to tell his new family that. He was afraid that without his money, without the gifts and comforts, his family would no longer love him. This is why he lied to them about having nothing to worry about. This is quite psychologically revealing because Jim's whole identity is wrapped up in the traditional male provider role. Note that he doesn't seem to spend his money on himself. The parties, the cars, the massive house, they were all for his family members. His entire self-worth is entangled with what he does, rather than who he is. He sees his value not in his personality, presence, or relationships, but in his ability to give his loved ones material comfort. Strip that away, and he believes there's nothing left. This belief isn't unusual in men raised under traditional masculine norms, where success is defined by financial stability, professional achievement, and the capacity to take care of others. When those conditions are removed, it doesn't just feel like a setback, it feels like his entire identity has been taken away from him. For Jim, losing his job is akin to losing his purpose, and that's when desperation sits in. We have no idea what his life was like before he married Lorraine. He mentions that he has alimony payments to keep up, but it's unclear if he has any biological children. What is clear is that the weight of his responsibilities swirl through his head at all times. Desperate, he turns to an old contact, Istvan Hegedesh from Force Tech, who can't offer him a legitimate job. However, as Jim had helped them with some off-the-books works before, Istvan offers him a lot of money if he's able to steal the blueprints for a sonic weapon he designed at Wayne Powers. A foreign government, condemned by the international community, is waging an unpopular war. That weapon could change everything. Jim knows what these weapons can do and the harm they will cause, but he needs the money. In his mind, it's either accept Istvan's offer or lose his family. And it's telling how he views love as something that must be earned rather than something that is freely given. The irony is, of course, that his family doesn't care about the cars, the money, or the house. They care about him and want to be with him even if he's poor. But he can't see that. Jim donned a combat suit and put his special forces experience to good use, and became a thief that people called the Human Armory on account of his massive arsenal of advanced weaponry. Jim isn't a gung-ho murderer though. Instead, he goes out of his way to use non-lethal means. The weapons were likely his own design, but a company like Wayne Powers had little interest in non-lethal tech, I'm sure. As Armory, he uses force field creating grenades, a powerful taser, a restrictive foam gun, and an electromagnetic pulse rifle which can disable any electronic device, including the Batsuit. The theft itself goes pretty smoothly, likely because Jim knew the blind spots in his old place of work, and he had always said that Wayne Power's security was lax. But one thing he hadn't counted on was the tenacity of Batman, and given Terry's proximity to the family, he recognises Jim's change in behaviour, locking himself away in his workshop, spending less and less time with his family, and being evasive about how he spends his evenings. And it's strange. Jim commits these crimes for his family reluctantly, granted, but part of him always wondered how his weapons would perform in the field. He relishes putting his weapons to the test against the police and Batman. His second heist inadvertently ends up causing a massive fire and almost kills police officers. Here, his morals are put to the test. If he were the heroic brave soldier he thinks of himself as being, he likely would have dropped everything to save the officers' lives. Instead, he flees. When Jared and Lorraine stumble upon his secret, just as Batman arrives on the scene, Armory is forced to confront his fears. And actually, the core emotion driving Armory is fear. He's afraid that without his money, without the gifts and comforts, his family will no longer love him. This is rooted in conditional self-worth. He believes that love must be earned, not given. It's not unheard of for people with this mindset to project their own insecurities onto others, assuming their loved ones value them for the same shallow reasons they do. But heaven forbid they actually talk about how they're feeling, lest their fears are realised. Of course, his family does care about him for who he is, but he's incapable of seeing it until it's too late. He can't imagine that he's enough on his own, because he's never built a self outside of utility. Batman's arrival at the workshop leads to Istvan trying to murder him to conceal the plot, but Jim won't stand for it. He knows that he has lost, and that if he commits murder, then there's no way he'll ever see his family again. For taking down Istvan and cooperating with the authorities, Jim is given a lenient sentence for the robberies, and his family stands by him. As you might expect, given the ending, Armory only appeared once in Batman Beyond, and didn't feature in the official tie-in comics from the era. He did appear in the mainline universe Batman Beyond comics though, during the Hush Beyond storyline. Shortly after getting out of prison, he reunited with his family, who were now living in a smaller apartment. As you might imagine, he was struggling to find a job. Bad enough that his field of expertise was so limited, but now that he was a convicted criminal, getting a job seemed to be impossible. Upon returning home, he found his family bound and gagged by the new version of Hush, who was murdering present-day villains using the methods of Batman's classic rogues. Hush murdered the Tate family, impaling Jim on a sharpened umbrella, harkening back to the Penguin. If you're at all familiar with my other videos about Batman Beyond characters, I'm sure you all know what I'm going to say about these comics. Too many readers conflate them with the animated series, but they were published about a decade after the show ended without the involvement of anyone that had worked on the show. They are not in the same continuity. They are their own separate thing. If I were feeling uncharitable, I'd go as far as calling them glorified fanfiction. That's not to say that they're bad. Some of them are. But all too often, they went down obvious paths, like bringing back Dick Grayson or developing Beyond versions of classic Batman villains. They really don't stick to the spirit of the show. And in this story, seeing several great Beyond villains getting killed off by one of Batman's least interesting foes left a bitter taste. Your mileage may vary, but I generally don't enjoy them. But to get back to Armory, whose story I do enjoy, Armory's tragedy isn't that he turned to crime. It's that he never let his family love the real him. He built a life on gifts and grand gestures, never realising that what his loved ones valued most was his presence, not his paycheck. He didn't have to become Armory. He just needed to be honest. But he was so convinced that love was transactional and so terrified of appearing weak or incapable that he chose silence over vulnerability. And that silence nearly cost him everything. And I think there's a lesson here for us all to learn. Fear, when left unspoken, festers into desperation. That pride, when mistaken for strength, isolates us. And that the people who truly care about us aren't keeping score. The story of Armory is a cautionary tale, not just about the immorality of weapons of wars or crime or about what happens when we let our fears define us. If Jim had shared his burdens, asked for help, or trusted in love that wasn't tied to wealth, his story might have ended differently. And perhaps that's something we can all take to heart. Tell someone when you're scared. Ask for help when it all feels like it's too much. You are more than your job, your paycheck, or your output. You are a person, and you are enough. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Monday to talk about a character that made a very unlikely appearance in Batman the Animated Series, the Old West bounty hunter Jonah Hex, and how he was a perfect foe for Ra's al Ghul. And then next Friday, it'll be time for me to do the video a lot of people have been asking for. Yes, I'm going to talk about the King of Metropolis and Superman's archenemy, Lex Luthor, and how his jealousy and cynicism drove him during Superman the Animated Series. Hope to see you then.